What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. Today we're going to do a Hanzo premium deck profile. So a lot of the stuff that came out in the prior V collection series, we got Hanzo support. And I know we got just the new Nubatama support that's coming out for V premium, but I just wanted to cover this as more of a casual fun deck and see what the tools that this deck can utilize and actually have a fun time playing this deck. So we're going to cover the winning image, the card ratios, and then a few combos, and then just wrap it up for today. All right, let's get right into it. Real quick sponsorship note. So we actually have Next Level Gaming taking pre-orders for the new keychains, and as you can see on the screen, we have Night Rose and many others that are fan favorites. I personally like the Night Rose one a lot, and as you can see, the art is actually encased into the actual keychain, so you don't have to worry about like it peeling off or anything like that. So it's really good quality, and so I definitely recommend for anybody that wants to have their favorite ones from the art designs displayed as well. So yeah. Right now they're doing a special where you can buy 3 and get 1 free, but if you just want 1 keychain, you can use the code Commander Jaime, it's down in the description below, and get a 10% discount on your next purchase. So for the winning image for this deck, the new Hanzo has a very unique skill where it basically has 1 in hand and 1 in soul. The hand skill is that basically at the beginning of your opponent's turn, if your Vanguard is the original Hanzo, you can discard 2 cards from your hand and write this as rested, and all of your rear guards get plus 5k until the end of the turn. Now at the end of that turn, you write the original Hanzo and actually as rested from the soul. So you get 2 protect markers in that sense because you do get the right benefit, and so you discard 2, you get immediately 1 protect marker back, but then you get the next one at the end of the opponent's turn, so just be mindful of that. But it has that dynamic where you can do something on your opponent's turn defensively, and then you can utilize the rear on your field for extra shield in that perspective. And so some people have used protect 2, typically I use protect 1, but you can go either way just depending on the matchup. If your opponent can remove your field, I recommend protect 1 at that point. But the other skill is a soul skill, which helps with the aggression of this deck. And so when you're Vanguard with Hanzo, in its name actually attacks, you can retire one of your grade zeros and call this unit from soul to regard circle, and this gets 20k and can attack from the back row. And at the end of the turn, you can put this card back into the soul and then actually call an evil decoy token. So this deck focuses on the evil decoy tokens too, but this helps you attack extend. So the more Hanzo of the new ones that you have in soul, the more attacks that you have available to you. So you can use this during your stride turns or even before stride if you're on your grade 3 turn, for example. And so it just helps with increasing the number of attacks and also being a beater. 32k is no joke just by just retiring a decoy token. Actually not even a decoy token, any grade 0. So it helps with that regard too. And in the stride game, we do have our strides. Since we're not playing Jamio Congo, we have access to Shirane Rin over here, so that's where it forces down, cards from your opponent's hand. And then GB3, when dominated units attack, they get 10k and an additional plus crit. So, and then the original skill also gives them plus 5, that's a 15k. It forces more cards out of your opponent's hand, and it doesn't include the number of attacks that you're going to do. So the more attacks that you have, especially when your opponent's hand is dwindling and they're at higher damage, the more threatening of a kill turn that can be. We have the new stride over here that's fairly new at this point, but what it does is that when it attacks, you can retire 2 grade zeros from your field and actually draw 2 cards and bounce everything from your field, and then call up to 2 cards from your hand. And then if you call 2, you could actually get plus 10k and a crit until the end of the turn for this unit. This helps multi-attack, and then also it takes advantage of the tokens that you generate with Hanzo. So sometimes you may not be able to use all your tokens with the Hanzo effect, so you may have some of those tokens just chilling there. And if you don't want to use them as 5k intercepts and during your opponent's turn, you can use them for even the stride at that point too, because you could just replace the tokens. And the additional crit helps with that pressure too, especially on first stride, and then you are enabling multi-attack as well. The one thing that I don't like about this stride with the new Hanzo is that the timing does not work. This bounces everything, so any additional tokens that you may have still lingering are gone at that point. So this guy doesn't come out at that point. And if you try doing this first, he'll come out and then use this skill. You'll bounce him out back to hand, which is not really what you want. You actually want to keep it in your soul so you can actually be an attacker at that point. So be mindful of that timing. And then lastly, we have Sukumorokan. This is the generic GB2 skill. When placed, counterblast 2, and basically your opponent is reduced to 4 cards in the hand, and everything else is bound until the end of their turn. And so this can force limiting that attack, the hand size, so that way the number of attacks that you have, if you could do more than 4 attacks at that point, especially with the new Hanzo and then also some other card that I'm playing, you can rip through your opponent's hand and actually go for game 2. So these are some key plays just to have in mind. And then of course we're using the over trigger. When you bust this out in a drive check, and all of a sudden your Vanguard not only does like all these like hard restrictions or domination and all that stuff, now it restands on top of that and makes something else 100 million K. It gets really nutty. So that's why I put it up here. But let's start right diving into the actual card ratios and then go from there. Also, real quick shout out to both 02 Pass and Polar Lover 1. So both of them are like both Nubatama enthusiasts. Both are Nubatama enthusiasts, and so they're really great phenomenal players. They just live and breathe in Nubatama. Polar Lover 1 actually has top recently in the BSFO, and I faced him in top A. He actually has a recent Hanzo deck profile, so I'm going to link that so you guys can see his build, and actually took some of his advice with this build too. 02 Pass is just phenomenal because he just tries and tweaks a lot of different builds, different ideas. So a lot of that Nubatama knowledge is bounced back between him and I, and so a lot of the inspiration and some of the key things that I took are also in this video. And so I just wanted to make sure that I shout out to both of those guys because they're awesome players. But now into the grade 3s, and so really we're gonna play the 4 Hanzo old and the 4 Hanzo new, and then one of the Fuzen Kango. So again, with the old Hanzo, it's really meant to be your Vanguard, and so you're going to stride. So mainly its act skill isn't gonna do anything, but when you do use it, it's an act once per turn, retire 2 grade 0s, and then this unit gets 20k until the end of the turn. Then choose any number of rear guards on both sides of the field and then actually bounce them back. And then if your opponent is a grade 3 or greater, then your opponent chooses cards from his hand equal to the number that will bounce back from his field to his hand and discard them. So you can kind of like pseudo retire in that sense. So in the event that you can't stride and you're forced to do the Hanzo play, like the original one, that's something to keep in mind. And if you go first, it really just bounces things back and it's just a big beater. And then if you got like more cards to help with that, it can go with that. But it's mainly the main Vanguard, and you can use the extra copies to be able to do ultimate stride and the progenitor dragon, which is actually really useful in this deck. The new Hanzo, like I said, has those 2 skills, but it's really that attack extender, and once in a blue moon I do use the defensive skill. You want maximum copies because you need to see them. There's actually cards that actually put from the hand into soul. There are cards that also soul charge, so the more cards that you have of that copy, more than likely you'll be able to put it in soul much more easier, much more quicker too. So when it gets to your grade 3 and stride turns, you can be aggressive with 4 or 5 attacks plus at that point. Fuzen Kango is really a flex spot, so you can play any other grade 3s, like, you know, the one, the Mitsukage or Mikazagage, the chicken KFC, you name it. This was actually recommended by Polar Lover 1, and so he said that, you know, it's a sentinel restriction. So when this unit attacks Vanguard or Regard Circle, it also has a protect marker. If your damage zone is 5 cards, you can actually Soul Blast a grade 3, which is easy in this deck because you're trying to force Hanzo into that. Bind any number of cards from your drop zone, and then this unit gets 5k for each binded. And then of course your opponents cannot call sentinels from their hand, so this helps with that sentinel restriction. This could be the difference between of actually landing the 6 damage hit, so this helps in that regard. And it also has protect, so if you misrode for whatever reason, you still have something to work with. But this is a flex box, so feel free to change it up to whatever you want to. Onto the grade 2s, we're playing 4 Magatsu Gale, 3 of the Genkai, 3 of the Zagensu, and 2 of the Akura. And so with having this in mind, one of the grade 2s that we got, it was this grade 2 over here, that's supposed to work with Hanzo. And again, the collection that was released was more geared to the premium, so this might be more relevant to that. But what I found myself with premium, it felt a little too clunky, especially even sometimes with the stride turns. So it didn't really make as much sense with this card, and it's a great card, don't get me wrong, it's a great skill, but you can change up the deck a little bit too to make it more fitting at that point. And Polar Lover even expressed that where you are better off with some of the older cards that have come out too. And then he also has placed the Jiren, which is the counter charger that goes into Soul, as an example, and just making different numbers in the early game too. And with Magatsu Gale, some people don't like it, and a lot of people do love that card. And what it does is that when it's placed, Counter Blast, Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and this unit gets plus 6k until the end of the turn, so it's a 15k beater. And then at the end of the battle, did this unit attack, you put this into the Soul and actually return one of your regards to the hand. And so this helps you cycle through cards, and also return some of the resources, which a lot of these grade 2s are great to reuse. And so if they're on Regard Circle, Magatsu Gale can actually bounce them back for the next turn, which could be your grade 3 turn or your strike turn, so that's still important. But at the same time, it actually helps with that aggression too in the early game. It's one of the easy cards that you can reliably make sure you do something in the early game, and then it goes into Sol, so you could help prevent damage denying, because most of the time you bounce the unit in the other front row circles, so then your Vanguard is really the only card left, and at that point they either attack it or they just pass turn. And so those are the little things that I considered. And Magatsu Gale actually works in the stride turns too, so like the new stride, the one that bounces and calls and gets a crit, you can call this and it makes a solid column with some of the cards, making like anywhere from 26k plus at that point too, and further drawing into cards that you may need to build up a hand to live defensively as well. And then of course there's other strides that work with it as well. It's a solid beater that you could still work with too as well. And so going into Genkai and Zangetsu, they kind of go into together. I guess I'll start with Zangetsu. It's because, you know, act Vanguard or Regard Circle, you can actually counterblast, call an Evil Decoy token to Regard Circle, and then all of your tokens will get boost and plus 5k. And that's very key because it also stacks. So for example, if there's an existing token, it'll get the plus 5, and then if you do it again, it'll get another plus 5. So you can have tokens get, you know, 5, 10k, 15k, depending on how many counterblasts you have. We do have some counter chargers in the deck to help with that too, because it could be a problem, but it helps with that winning image of actually generating those decoy tokens. And then the last skill that it has is that when it's attacked, you may change the attack's target to one of your tokens instead, and if you do, you can bounce this to your hand. So it's another way, if this card is just chilling on the field as a Regard Circle, you can bounce them by redirecting the attack to the token and then actually reuse them for later too still. So he helps ninja his way out, and that way you can use it next turn. And then Genkai kind of complements this as well. So you'll be focused on generating tokens. There's more cards that generate tokens in the grade 1 lineup as well. Genkai helps with that synergy, but it also helps with that early game if you do open up with him in the early game too. So for example, during your turn, it's a continuous scale. If you have a token, you can actually have this unit and all of your tokens get 5k. It's a continuous effect, so if you have 2, they stack. So your tokens automatically become plus 10k or plus 5k depending on how many Genkais you have. And then the last skill is also very vital, and so when it's placed, you can choose one of your Regards and it gets boost. And so that could be a token that's just chilling that you haven't used Agensu skill at all, or you don't have this Agensu. And then also, if you did not choose this unit, you can soul charge one. That's where some of the soul charging actually comes from too. And so all of a sudden, there's a probability of soul charging the new Hanzo. Now, it's not going to happen every time, but it helps build up that soul resource too for other cards too that actually generate tokens, such as the grade 1, which I'll cover in a bit too. So it has that synergy with managing the resources, having that early game. You can have a decent early game where you start having those, like, you know, 19k or 24k columns while you're a grade 2. And that forces basically getting over a trigger threshold at that point too. And so the last grade 2 over here is Akora. And so this is an old card and a fan favorite that I've actually have used with Hanzo, especially for V Premium and even in Premium. So when this unit is placed, you can retire 2 grade 0s and then draw a card. And then until the end of the turn, this unit can attack from the back row, attacking the Vanguard, of course, and it gets plus 15k as well. So this becomes a 24k hitter to the Vanguard, and that could be vital because sometimes when you ride to grade 3 and you can't really do much with Hanzo, you having extra attacks really make that turn much more threatening. Not only that, but if you don't have a Hanzo in the Soul, the new one, or additional Hanzos, you can have this as another alternative to have more attacks still. So this is more of a flex spot too. If you want, you can replace this with the new grade 2 as well. Or you can replace this and maximize Genkai and Zangetsu, or just change up the lineup completely. So it's really that preference and what you're trying to really get consistently going for you. And I just really like Akora because, you know, you get the extra draw, so you get to dig deeper into your deck, and then Gale does the same thing in other cards too. So that way you can build that solid hand and actually get to your key cards, and then of course some cards that you can put the new Hanzo from hand into Soul as well. Onto the grade 1s. So we're playing 3 of the new grade 1, 3 of the grade 3's top 5 searcher. We're playing the Kurogiri here 3, and then also Sakura Fubuki at 3. Man, these Nubatama names, I swear. So the new grade 1 is really good. It has an act, so you can retire this unit, call up to 2 tokens, and then if you have a Vanguard with Hanzo, you can actually put a card from your hand into soul. This can be any card, but typically you want to do the Hanzo, the new one. And then of course search your deck for up to 1 card with Hanzo in its card name, reveal it and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. And this ability of this card can only be used once per turn. So it's a hard once per turn. You can't just use 2 in a turn. It's only once per turn. And so with this ability, it helps getting those key Hanzo pieces that you need. But if you do already have the new Hanzo in your hand, that's where it can go into so much more easier. That's why, you know, digging deeper into your deck is so vital, because this card can benefit from that too. And it generates tokens very easily. So you don't use soul, you don't use counterblast. It actually just retires itself, which ultimately the tokens make up for it at that point too. So it's a really solid card, so I definitely recommend in 3, because typically you don't want to resolve this until your grade 3 turn, so you get the full benefit of actually putting the card into soul. And over here we have the token generate Kurogiri. So what it does is an act, Soul Blast 2, bounce this card to hand and call up to 2 tokens. That's very cool, because we're playing 3 because we want to see it pretty often, and once you use it, it'll go back to your hand, so you could technically keep using the same one too. It's also 10k shield, so that helps with actually having shield value in your hand too. So it's a very key card. Thanks to Genkai, it makes things a lot easier to be able to use Magatsu Gale and this card at the same turn, on grade 2 turn, because you can get that additional soul and be able to make up for it too. So those are the little things that matter over time. And then of course the stride, if you know you go into the one stride that requires 2 grade 0s, this actually helps with that. You Soul Blast 2, generate 2 tokens, and your stride's good to go. So it even helps with the synergy in the stride turns. And then of course the tokens can be used for the new Hanzo to come out and attack even more. And then over here with the grade 3 top 5 searcher, it's just adding the consistency. Again, you one of those new Hanzos, and also just being able to like pitch to stride as well. You could ultimate stride or even use the progenitor dragon. The progenitor dragon is actually pretty good as a first stride option, so sometimes that might be the case and you want to grab the original Hanzo, so that's what that's for. And then of course this actually gets power if you have a token, so it's a 13k booster or power attacker that it can actually get just benefit by just seeing a token, which more than likely you'll have a token regardless. And over here, Sakata Fubuki, this is the counter charger. It's been a great card since it came out, and when it's placed, if you have 3 or more units, you can discard a card from your hand. This unit gets plus 3k until the end of the turn, and if there were 1 or less face-up cards in your damage zone, you can draw a card and counter charge. So just be mindful of the circumstances when you can start counter charge, and you can do key plays with Zagansu and Magatsu Gale early on to be able to get the benefit of drawing and actually digging deeper into your deck. And then Magatsu Gale can actually bounce this one too to reuse the same thing. The original Hanzo, if you do that turn with his skill, he can bounce Sakura Fubuki, and also you can call it again to get another counter charge and generate more tokens for like the new Hanzo to be able to attack, for example with Zagetsu. So it's just very cool, a very bountiful card, and it's just really still appreciated. Last of the grade 0s, obviously we have our starter that you want to draw on ride, dig deeper into the deck. We have the crits, so we have the ability to stride with pitching. With this one, you want to be able to stride maximally and keep the grade 3s like the new Hanzo in hand, so you can use the grade 1 to shove it into Soul. So that's why you really don't want to discard it. There's actually no way to get cards from the drop zone back into the deck or anything like that at this moment for Hanzo, so once they're in the drop zone, they're kind of like gone. We also have the other crit that goes into Soul. When you have GB1, your Vanguard gets plus 10k, which actually is really nice because it builds Soul again, so that way you can use it for that grade 1 to Soul Blast 2, generate more tokens. In that regard, instead of the 4th one, we have the Dragon Empire over trigger, which is phenomenal. Again, when you drive check it, choose one of your Vanguards and stand it. So on top of all the domination, the discarding, and pressure that you get for your Vanguards, none of them really restand in Nubatama, but now drive checking this, you can actually have a more threatening turn with a restanding Vanguard in that regard. So this is very much appreciated too. And then of course 4 heals because you want to G-guard and stuff. Would I consider the new heals? Probably. I'm not too sure yet exactly. It's really a metagame call for you guys. If you appreciate the 20k shield early on, or if you want to use the benefit of the 15 with the additional skill, that could be more benefit. So it's really up to you at that point. And then of course the Sentinels, we have 2 PG and 2 critical Sentinels. I just want more aggression. You know, the more criticals, the better. Especially if you twin drive or triple drive and you have multi attacking rearguards, you can have them get crit on top of that, so it makes that more threatening. The shield just helps if you want to do a 1-card drop. You are a protect clan too as well, so you can generate protect markers, so it's not like the end of the world, and it's just it's vital in that point too. And so it's this ratio has been nice for me too, so if you want to tweak it, go for free. Onto the stride zone. So we are playing 12 strides, and this could be a little more of a flex spot too. Nubatama has a lot of situational strides, so it really depends what you're trying to accomplish, but this is what I've been trying lately. Like I said, we're playing 2 of this new card that you could bounce, call, get crit, pressure, really solid card. Sometimes you may go into the second. Rin is really good. So there are times where you have that pressure as GB3, so especially if you went first and G guarded, and then as soon as you go into your stride, you actually have access to that could be more threatening. And if they live that next turn, you may have to go into the second Rin, so that's super helpful. Mujin Load over here is an old good card that honestly what it does is act once per turn. You can counterblast, flip a copy, and then for every card face up in your G zone, you actually choose that many rearguards on either side of the field, and if it was your opponent, they actually get power, they get dominated and attack the Vanguard and also get power, so that plus 4k is very vital. And also your units get plus 4k, so sometimes those numbers can matter too. It's just helpful. This is really good at 5 damage, so I recommend just being mindful of that, especially if they're a clan that cause a lot of units like Excel clans, especially like Gold Paladin. So a good Mujin Lore turn is really good at that point too. That helps you seal the deal at that point. And then we have Drachma and the Progenitor Dragon over here. Drachma, again, you just never know when you need to drop down a Drachma. Counterblast 2, retire everything in your opponent's side, including the Vanguard, and then of course they have to drop 2 cards and ride 1 of them. And so if they don't have the grade 3, they might be at a grade that's lower, or if they completely don't have soul and the enough cards, they can just lose the game up front. Again, if you get Drachma yourself, this is, you get ultimate stride if you're at a lower grade but have a copy of the Vanguard, and if you're already GB3, that's also one thing to consider. It's still strong, so you definitely want to have at least 1 copy. And then of course the Progenitor Dragon, like I said, it's a good card as a first stride option. Counterblast 2, Soul Blast 1 until the end of the turn. This unit battles all of your opponent's units in 1 attack. This gets additional 10k, and then when it hits, for each attack that hits, you can countercharge 1. So you can get your counterblast back essentially, and it gets rid of your opponent's field at the same time, and then your rearguards are just more focused on beating the Vanguard at that point. So it's just a very solid card. Suka Moroccan, like I said, bind your opponent's hand to 4 and really take advantage of that. They only have so many cards to defend with, and then if you can break through to 6 damage, you win. And then over here we have Mokuro, which is, a little bit different act, GB2, Soul Blast 2, and then flip a copy and discard 1 card, then choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and they can actually attack all of their opponent's rearguards. So the drive checks will be from you, so just be mindful of that too. And it's just seeing more drive checks too, potentially to beef up your units. So I recommend having no rearguard next to it to get the additional benefit from that trigger. Onto the G guards, I'm playing 4, but you can play more and tweak with the ratios. I definitely recommend Gando Korokan. So what it does is that when it's placed, if the number of your opponent's cards in their hand is 3 or more, this gets plus 5k. And then if they have 6 or more, it gets an additional 10k. So this could be your consistent big shield of 30k. That's why I played 2, and it's free. Once you get to the other units over here, like Shizuki Hime, she's a GB1. She's the flip one, and then what happens is that if your opponent has to discard 1 card, if they decide not to, this unit can get 20k. It's kind of useless because most of the time they're going to discard the card and push through, and now you have to drop more cards yourself. But just have it there, and then also it's useful in case you just need to flip more cards in the G zone for cards like Mujin Lord and other cards that just depend on the ratios. And then Gaharokan, he is Counterblast, Soul Blast 1, dominate 1 on your opponent's back row grade once, and put it into the Guardian Circle. So in V era, luckily we have like those 10k grade 1s, so that can help with the shield. And also you have problematic grade 1s that can, cause some issues too. And it could also get rid of annoying units in general too that are grade 1s in the back. So just be mindful of that too. And it can really devastate an opponent's combo if timed right. So be mindful of that. So onto the combos. So one of the ones that I want to show early on is that if you have 2 Counterblasts and you open up with Zangetsu and some of these other grade 2 pieces that I mentioned, you can actually start off with this. And so you can call this grade 1, which is the token generator. And so in this example, you can actually do the Soul Blast 2 skill to bounce. Generate the 2 tokens. Next, you could actually call Genkai, and it doesn't matter which one you choose, just choose another unit so you can soul charge, because you never know, you could soul charge something that's useful. Let's say I soul charge this card to help with that. But thanks to that, now you can actually have access to Magetsu Geyu, Counter Blast, and Soul Blast, and actually draw a card, go from there. And then, of course, lastly, with Zangetsu over here, you can Counter Blast, generate the last token. They all get +5 and boost. Now with Genkai, they also get +5k. So you have 10k boosters in the sense. So if you want, you could attack with the Vanguard first. So this is 19, drive check. This is 14 plus 10, so 24. And then over here, we got 15 plus 10 makes 25. And then at the end of the battle, go into Soul, bounce this unit, and boom. And so just with 2 Counter Blasts and having those 2 key cards, and also the grade 1 that generates tokens, you have a full back row of tokens, which is good for the next Hanzo turn, your strides, and you clear your front row. So now they have to either attack the Vanguard or pass turn or find different things. And if they do give you a damage, you really need just maybe 1 damage to work with and kind of go from there. On to the next combo. I just want to show off Sukumaru-kan stride play over here. And so you may end up with a token still just lingering. And then of course, if you're able to get a new Hanzo into Soul, you can actually use a card like Akora to really help you get you to that 5th battle outside of like calling the new Hanzo. So that way, a card like when you stride with Sukumaru-kan, you can do the skill where you can Counter Blast 2. And then of course, they go down to 4 cards. And now you just need to make sure that you can hit 5 attacks at that point, because that means even if they drop 1 card per attack, you're still able to deal that 6 damage in that regard too. So this is one example of a play. And so if you have a card like Sakaru Fubuki, you can countercharge as well, and then you can use the token generator Kurigi to use the skill Soul Blast 2. Let's say these 2 cards, or actually that's 3. These 2 cards, you get the 2 tokens, and then let's say you immediately retire the 2 tokens, and now you basically draw another card, and he's really good to go for having that attack from the back row. And then you have Sakaru Fubi over here that gave you the extra counter charge too, and depending if you need more soul, in this case I do already have soul, but you can use a card like Gale to Counter Blast and Soul Blast to get more power. And then of course, you can call something like this guy to also give the soul charge if you want to. So let's say I soul charge this guy or something like that. So your field can look like something like this. You do have a token right here, so this actually gets power, and the token gets power as well. You can target the token so that it could boost as well, but when you attack, it's gonna disappear anyway. So a sequence of attacks that you can do is actually just attack with this to poke the Vanguard. This will be 14k, for example. And then if you want, you can actually attack with either this guy or this guy. This could be the 24k. They have to drop a good amount of shield for that. And so once we get to this step, you can have the option to attack with the Vanguard. So that way, if you get multiple triggers, then you distribute to this and another attacking unit. That's where you can use the skill of the new one, retire the token, call behind, boom, you got another attacker right there. You do your triple drive, distribute the triggers, depending on who's bigger. This is 26, end of the battle, this goes into Soul. You can bounce this, or you can bounce this. If you want to use this as an intercept and try to survive next turn, you could bounce this instead. Or you could bounce the 10k shield to also get more shield. You probably want this for shield. And then of course, just 32k minimum, and boom. So ideally, this is the finishing turn at this point, so you don't have to concern yourself what to bounce back. But you never know with 6 damage heals. So this is just an example of one of the stride turns. And so you can start seeing that cards like the new Hanzo and the Akora over here, they can actually add to those numbers of attacks while you're doing your stride plays that help restrict your opponent's plays and hand resources and field and all that kind of stuff. And that's the deck profile, amigos. I hope you enjoyed it. Honestly, this deck is pretty fun, especially it has a little bit of everything too. This is more for the casual premium side, obviously, and so there are, you know, big dog decks that would probably give this deck a run for its money. But I know Polar Lover one, he actually had a pretty good record getting into top 8. It's just that unfortunately he had to face me, and I pretty much opened up pretty well as well, so he didn't even get to his grade 3 turns. So Fenrir aggro was designed to do things like that too. So but he's a really good player, and a lot of insight was given into this deck as well. A lot of thought. So feel free to tweak it too. I mean, I feel like there's still flex room with the grade 2s and the grade 1s. Just like I said, that's that new grade 2. But for me, I felt like it was a little bit clunky, and I decided to use different grade 2s. If you have any questions or even suggestions, feel free to comment down below. And if you like the video, like it down below, and then you can share it to your friends that are Dragon Empire fans, or even Nubatama fans, or even Ninja in general. Please do so, share and subscribe, amigos. See ya. Bye.